You know, it's funny. If I asked you right now to just casually hand over the password to your online bank account, you'd look at me like I had completely lost my mind.
Oh, absolutely. I'd probably walk out of the room.
Right, because you probably have like two-factor authentication set up, maybe a passcode on your phone.
Oh, I have the biometric fingerprint lock just to check my balance,
Exactly. We even set up PIN codes to protect our Netflix profiles.
just so our own family members don't mess up our algorithm.
Yes, we are so fiercely, unapologetically protective of our digital and financial access. But then, when it comes to our own emotional well-being,
We leave the front door wide open.
literally wide open. We leave it unlatched. Sometimes we literally take the hinges off and we just let people wander in with muddy shoes and completely wreck the place.
And then the crazy part is, we sit around wondering why we feel so utterly exhausted all the time.
Exactly. And that right there is the core tension we are looking at today. We've got this fascinating stack of research and insights in front of us.
Yeah, it's a really incredible deep dive into the dynamics of human relationships.
And it's anchored heavily by Lysa TerKeurst's profoundly insightful work, Good Boundaries and Goodbyes.
Such an important piece of work.
It really is. So the mission for this deep dive is to completely deconstruct the myth that setting a boundary is somehow, I don't know, unloving.
Or selfish. Or unchristian.
Right, because we want to equip you with the actual psychological and practical tools to stop the dysfunction of unhealthy relationships.
And to do it without losing the most compassionate parts of who you are.
Yes, because you shouldn't have to sacrifice your sanity just to prove your loyalty to someone.
You really shouldn't. And what's fascinating here is how deeply ingrained the cultural misunderstanding of boundaries actually is.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It is. We are almost universally conditioned to view a boundary as a brick wall.
Like it's a weapon.
Exactly. A weapon designed to shove people away or punish them or just isolate ourselves completely.
But the reality presented in these sources flips that entirely on its head, right?
Completely. Boundaries aren't about shoving people away at all. They are the exact parameters that make sustainable love possible.
Wow. Parameters for sustainable love.
Yeah, they're the structural conditions that allow human connection to actually thrive in a safe environment.
Okay, let's unpack this because the cultural narrative we are fed about love, especially romantic love, but honestly, this applies to family and friendships too. It's basically a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Oh, the classic Hallmark trope.
We've all seen them. The plot is identical every single time.
There's always a misunderstanding, a little bit of interpersonal tension.
Right. Maybe the local inn is going out of business.
Naturally.
But by the end of the 90 minutes, the handsome prince or the rugged handyman saves the day. The snow falls gently on cue.
And every underlying character flaw is magically resolved forever.
Through the sheer power of love. And we unconsciously expect our real-life relationships to eventually end up with that tidy little bow.
Well, yeah, and the problem with that Hallmark narrative is that it operates in a vacuum. It's totally devoid of human autonomy and entrenched dysfunction.
So it's just not reality.
No, the source material paints a much more realistic, albeit less romantic, picture of how human beings actually operate.
Like in the real world, you might spill hot cocoa on that rugged handyman.
And instead of writing you a quirky love song, he completely loses his temper.
Right, he belittles you in public, tries to get you fired.
And maybe a few months later, you find out he's been manipulating your finances.
Yikes. So in a movie, love conquers all through grand gestures. But in reality,
Love requires a foundation of trust. And you simply cannot build trust that keeps getting broken.
oh wait, say that again.
You cannot build trust that keeps getting broken.
Yeah.
That is a foundational premise we just have to start with.
That is a gut punch.
It is, because trust is not a renewable resource that you can just infinitely deplete without consequences.
We really want to believe that, though. We want to believe that if we just love someone intensely enough, our love will act as like a magical solvent.
Right, like it will just fix their brokenness. We treat trust as a decision we make, like handing someone a gift.
But it's pointed out here that trust is actually the oxygen of love.
Yes, oxygen. When trust is repeatedly violated, love is literally strangled.
It just cannot breathe in an environment of constant betrayal.
It can't. And this dynamic becomes incredibly stark when we look at the mechanics of addiction and toxic behavior within a relationship.
Yeah, let's dive into that, because that changes everything.
It does. When someone is caught in a cycle of addiction, whether that is substance abuse, gambling, or even a deep-seated behavioral addiction like narcissism or chronic lying, they're no longer operating in shared reality.
That's terrifying. So they're just in their own world.
basically. They construct these elaborate, irrational justifications for their behavior that will never, ever make logical sense to a healthy person.
And they don't factor your heartbreak into their decision-making process at all.
Not at all. They will look at a completely blue sky,
Yeah.
tell you it is neon orange, and if you have the audacity to disagree with them,
They will systematically dismantle your reality until you feel like you are the crazy one.
exactly. Gaslighting at its finest.
It makes me think of this incredible imagery from counselor Jim Kress that's brought up in the research.
Oh, the pillow analogy, that one is
Yeah.
profound.
It really is. Okay, so imagine you are trying to have a serious, vulnerable, heartfelt conversation with someone who is deep in one of these toxic cycles.
Right, you're just pouring your heart out.
But Kress says you have to picture holding a large, dense pillow right in front of that person's face.
Just right between you and them.
Yeah. So when you are speaking to them, everything you say, every tear you shed, every logical plea you make, it must pass through the addiction or the dysfunction first.
The pillow absorbs it all.
Exactly. You're not actually communicating with the person you love.
The dysfunction is acting as a filter. It distorts, it weaponizes, and ultimately rejects your words before they ever reach the person's core.
You are literally trying to reason with an illness that demands absolute compliance.
And that visual is crucial. Right,
Yeah.
because it completely reorients our expectations.
So.
Well, you wouldn't expect a conversation to cure a physical disease, like diabetes or cancer.
No, of course not.
Yet we constantly expect a really good, heartfelt conversation to cure profound emotional and psychological dysfunction.
We think, like, if I can just explain how much they are hurting me, they'll stop.
But the dysfunction filters out your pain. It only absorbs what it can use to perpetuate itself.
It's honestly like trying to reason with a live hand grenade.
That's exactly what it is.
You're standing there crying, saying, please don't explode. Think of the consequences to our family. Think of the children.
And the grenade is just doing exactly what a pulled grenade does.
It's following its nature.
And the absolute tragedy is you don't have to be the person who pulled the pin to be utterly devastated by the shrapnel.
Right. The shrapnel hits everyone in the blast radius indiscriminately.
Completely indiscriminately. But this brings up a massive internal conflict, particularly for people who are highly empathetic.
Or people trying to live out a faith-based life, right?
Yeah.
There's a profound internal tension there.
Huge tension. People confuse the virtuous command to love, forgive, and be patient with the highly destructive reality of enabling dishonorable behavior.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second because this is the pushback I feel in my own heart.
Sure, go for it.
And I know so many people listening feel it too. If I set a hard boundary, if I literally lock the door, doesn't that mean I'm just giving up on them?
That's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah. Isn't it my ethical or spiritual duty to be endlessly loyal? Like, look at the Christian command, for example, to turn the other cheek or forgive 70 times 7.
Right. People quote that all the time to justify staying in abuse.
So if I walk away or put up a wall, aren't I violating the very definition of unconditional love?
That is the exact friction the author wrestles with. And it's a profound theological and psychological question.
So what's the answer? What is the why behind the necessity of boundaries?
It's rooted in a much deeper understanding of what true love actually requires. If we look at the ultimate example of love from a Christian perspective, Jesus laid down his life for a very specific, holy purpose.
To bring wholeness, healing, and ultimate salvation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He did not lay down his life to enable people to comfortably continue sinning without consequence.
Oh, wow. That's a huge distinction.
It is. He didn't beg for affection, and he certainly didn't accept manipulative excuses for destructive behavior.
I mean, he frequently walked away from toxic crowds.
He did. So drawing a boundary isn't giving up on the relationship. It is actually the highest form of fighting for the relationship.
Because you're protecting it from total destruction.
Yes. You are drawing a line that says, I love you too much to let you destroy yourself, and I love myself too much to let you destroy me in the process.
I love myself too much to let you destroy me in the process. That is incredibly powerful.
It reframes everything.
It really does. So a boundary isn't a wall to keep love out. It's a container to keep the relationship from spilling over into total destruction.
Exactly. And if love requires trust, and trust requires a safe environment, then we have to have a tangible way to measure and protect that safety.
Which brings us to what I think is the most like mind-bending paradigm shift in this entire stack of research.
The access versus responsibility equation.
Yes, the equation of access versus responsibility.
This equation is the absolute linchpin of sustainable relationships.
Tell me more because this completely changed my perspective.
Well, we hear the phrase unconditional love thrown around constantly in our culture, and it's a beautiful concept.
Of course.
You absolutely can love someone unconditionally. But here is the critical distinction. Relational access should never, ever be unconditional.
Let me just repeat that so it sinks in. Unconditional love does not equate to unconditional access.
It does not.
That is incredibly liberating.
It changes the entire power dynamic.
Yeah.
And there is fascinating historical and theological precedent for this concept of conditional access.
Yeah, the sources point out that God himself established boundaries from the very genesis of creation.
Right. If you look at Jeremiah 5.22, it describes God making the sand a boundary for the chaotic sea.
And the sea, to the ancient Near Eastern mind, represented untamed chaos and destruction. Right?
Yes, exactly. And it was given a firm limit it could not cross. The sand is the boundary.
Wow.
Furthermore, look at the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were granted unprecedented intimate access to God and to paradise.
But that access came with a clear boundary.
It did. And when the boundary was violated, there was a severe consequence. Their access was fundamentally reduced.
So the love remained, but the access was revoked.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about sin as a one-off mistake either.
Right, because we all make mistakes. The text makes this incredibly sharp distinction between sin and iniquity, which I had honestly never thought about before.
The psychological differentiation here is vital. Sin is often viewed as the action itself, the mistake, the sudden loss of temper, the isolated, hurtful word.
Okay, so what is iniquity then?
Iniquity points to the character, the deeply ingrained habit, or the hidden motivation behind the action. It is a premeditated or willfully repeated pattern.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Well, if I step on your foot by accident, that's a mistake. That's a sin.
Right, you say you're sorry and we move on.
Exactly. But if I repeatedly step on your foot every single day, and when you tell me it hurts, I tell you that your foot shouldn't be so sensitive.
Or you deny stepping on it at all.
Yes, that is iniquity.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental misuse of the relationship. And unchecked misuse always eventually devolves into abuse.
So if we look at this core formula that's laid out, it's basically all about balancing a scale.
Yes, a literal scale.
The level of access you grant someone in your life, to your time, your money, your physical space, your deepest emotional vulnerabilities, that must be met with an equal or greater level of responsibility from them.
Precisely. Let's quantify it to make it really practical. Imagine access and responsibility on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay, I'm visualizing it.
If you give a partner, a parent, or a best friend,
Yeah.
level 10, access to your life, meaning they know your deepest fears, they have keys to your house, they share your bank account, they must consistently demonstrate level 10 responsibility with those privileges.
They have to be trustworthy, kind, communicative, and safe.
Right. But if you give someone level 10 access and they are only capable of or willing to demonstrate level 3 responsibility, what is the inevitable mathematical result?
Chaos, heartbreak, resentment, and absolute chaos every single time.
Exactly. The scale is unbalanced.
And the universal mistake we make in this dynamic is that we exhaust ourselves trying to force the other person to increase their responsibility to a level 10.
We do. We beg, we plead, we drag them to therapy.
We send them deep dive analyses, we argue until 3 a.m.
But you cannot control another human being's level of responsibility. It is biologically and psychologically impossible.
So what can we control?
You can control reducing the access you grant them.
Yeah.
You drop it down to a level 3 so it matches what they're currently capable of handling.
And that reduction of access, that is the definition of a boundary.
That is the exact definition.
It's literally just math. You don't have to hate them. You just balance the equation.
Yes.
It makes me think of this great analogy from the text about walking on a beach.
Oh, the sand spurs.
Yeah. So, say you are walking barefoot on this beautiful scenic beach, but the sand is completely infested with these sharp, painful sand spurs. They are just digging into your heels.
Ouch.
Right. Now, you don't sit there and scream at your feet for being too sensitive. You don't blame the skin for bleeding. You blame the spurs.
Of course.
And you certainly don't just sit in the sand picking them out of your foot one by one, only to take another step and get 10 more. The environment itself is the source of the pain.
Right. And if the source of the pain, the sand isn't going to change its nature, you have to change your interaction with it.
You have to put on thick shoes. Or you have to leave and find a different beach entirely.
You reduce the access your bare feet have to that specific environment. You don't have to wage war on the beach, but you do have to protect your feet.
There's a super practical everyday example in the text about this too, involving something as simple as closets.
Yes, the clothing borrowing system.
Yeah. So the author, Lisa, and her daughters are very close. They love each other and they love fashion. So naturally, they had level 10 open access to each other's closets.
Anyone could walk in and borrow anything at any time.
Exactly. But eventually, clothes were going missing, expensive items were coming back stained, and shoes were getting ruined.
The level 10 access was no longer being met with level 10 responsibility.
Right. So instead of just screaming at each other every morning and ruining their familial bond over a stained sweater, they implemented a boundary.
They created a strict text-to-borrow system.
Yes. You have to text, ask permission to borrow a specific item, wait for approval, and state exactly when it will be returned cleaned.
They reduced the access to restore the respect.
It's a brilliant microcosm of the broader principle. Notice that the boundary didn't mean they stopped loving each other.
It didn't even mean they stopped sharing clothes entirely.
No, it just meant they implemented a structured system that required the appropriate level of responsibility before access was granted. It preserved the relationship by eliminating the chaos.
It's exactly like giving your house keys to a neighbor.
Oh, I love this one.
Just because they live right next door, and just because you wave to them every morning, doesn't mean you give them 24/7 unannounced access to your living room.
Especially if they have a track record of coming over, tracking mud on the rug, and leaving your front door wide open when they leave.
Right. You take the key back.
You don't burn their house down in retaliation. You don't even have to stop waving to them in the driveway. You just calmly take your key back.
Taking the key back is an act of fundamental sanity. But this highlights a profound psychological paradox.
What's that?
Well, if understanding this access to responsibility equation makes so much logical, mathematical sense, if it's as simple as taking the key back, why do we constantly, routinely fail to apply it in our real adult lives?
Why do we stay in the chaos?
Yes, why?
Oh, because our brains play tricks on us. Over time, we allow ourselves to become completely willfully blind to the dysfunction right in front of our faces. We just acclimate to the crazy.
We really do. We build a tolerance to toxicity.
And the source material emphasizes a chilling reality about this. Relationships rarely die because of the hard conversations that were had.
They die because of the necessary conversations that were consistently avoided.
We dodge the friction.
We swallow our discomfort to keep the peace.
Hmm.
And in doing so, we create an incubator where dysfunctions can flourish unchecked.
Let's define dysfunction for a second.
At its core, dysfunction simply means a mechanism isn't working correctly. But when we refuse to address it, cognitive distortions step in.
We start twisting reality to feed these dysfunctions until we accept the abnormal as our daily normal. So let's actually define what normal, healthy access looks like so we can spot the distortions. The research breaks down the 5 T's of responsible access.
The 5 T's. Yes, this is a great framework.
If you're going to give someone high-level access to your life, they need to consistently demonstrate these 5 things: trust, truthfulness, transparency, tenderness, and a team approach.
Let's look closely at those because they are distinct.
Okay, let's go through.
Trust is the foundation. Can I rely on your character? Truthfulness is about factual reality. Do you lie to me or gaslight me?
Right, and transparency.
Transparency is about hidden motives. Are you operating with an agenda, or are your cards on the table?
What about tenderness? Because I feel like that one is often overlooked.
Tenderness is crucial. It's the delivery system of love. Do you speak to me with care, or are you harsh and callous?
And finally, a team approach.
That means we are collaborating to solve a problem, rather than competing to see who can win the argument.
Okay, so when those 5 T's are consistently missing, say, someone is constantly harsh, secretive, and treats every disagreement like a war they have to win, but we stubbornly keep their access at a level 10. We are basically operating with 0 sense.
Literally 0 sense. There's actually a proverb reference here, Proverbs 17.18 that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, I know this one. Verse 17 is the famous one, a friend loves at all times.
But verse 18 immediately follows it by saying that one who has no sense puts up security or cosigns a loan for a neighbor.
The juxtaposition of those 2 verses is brilliant. At first glance, it feels like a total contradiction. Love your friend unconditionally at all times, but absolutely do not cosign their car loan.
Right.
Because if I love them unconditionally, shouldn't I bail them out financially?
No, it is not a contradiction. It is a masterclass in boundaries. It teaches that while you can love a friend endlessly, love does not mandate throwing reason, logic, and self-preservation out the window. Putting up a blind financial guarantee for someone who has a history of being financially irresponsible is objectively unwise. It doesn't help them learn financial stewardship, and it leads to ruin for both of you.
Because you are granting level 10 financial access without requiring even level 2 financial responsibility.
Exactly.
And when we do that emotionally, when we emotionally co-sign for someone's toxic behavior, the inevitable danger is deep-seated resentment.
Massive resentment.
When we refuse to name the dysfunction, we start silently resenting the very access we've voluntarily given them,
We trap ourselves in this suffocating codependent loop.
where our baseline okayness depends entirely on their unpredictable okayness. If they wake up in a bad mood, the whole house has to have a bad day.
If they're angry, we have to spend hours tiptoeing around on eggshells just to manage their emotions for them.
Which is the exact definition of normalizing toxic behavior.
When you live in a codependent loop long enough, your brain literally has to rewrite its understanding of reality just to survive the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You start accommodating the dysfunction so smoothly you don't even realize you're doing it.
Oh, I have to share the story from the book because I was reading it and just laughing out loud at how relatable it is.
Is this the hot water heater?
Yes, the hot water heater and floodlights situation. Okay, so Lisa's house developed this bizarre, inexplicable electrical wiring issue. For whatever reason, the circuits got crossed, and you could only get hot water in the master bathroom shower if the back patio floodlights outside were turned on.
Which is absurd.
Totally absurd. So if you were in the shower and someone in the kitchen noticed the patio lights were on during the day and flicked them off, you instantly got blasted with freezing cold water.
A nightmare.
Now, any rational person would immediately call an electrician. It's a broken system. But what did she do? She just trained her entire family, her friends, and overnight guests to leave the floodlights on.
She adapted to the crazy.
She actually contemplated crafting a cute little instructional sign to hang in the bathroom explaining the floodlight rule. Hello, dysfunction?
It's a highly amusing story, but it perfectly encapsulates a profound psychological trap. Humans are incredibly scrappy and adaptable.
Often to our own detriment.
We will expend massive amounts of energy learning to flawlessly navigate around a problem rather than expending the brief, concentrated effort required to actually fix it.
But I'm going to push back here because, practically speaking, isn't it just easier and infinitely cheaper to leave the floodlights on?
Sure, in the short term.
I mean, an electrician is going to charge you $500 just to open the wall. Leaving a light switch flipped up is free. If navigating around the problem technically gets you a hot shower, why rock the boat? Why create conflict?
Okay, if we look at this through the lens of interpersonal neurobiology, navigating around a quirky electrical switch is indeed just a harmless inconvenience. But when you transplant that exact floodlight coping mechanism into a human relationship,
It's different.
it's completely different. It requires you to actively betray your own reality.
How do you mean?
If you apply the floodlight method to an unpredictable partner, an alcoholic parent, or a narcissistic boss, you are constantly training yourself and demanding that everyone around you accommodate their dangerous behavior.
Wow. You are essentially hanging invisible signs in your house that say, don't speak to dad after 5 p.m. because he's been drinking.
Or make sure you agree with every political opinion she has, or she will scream at you.
You are institutionalizing the toxicity.
Yes. And over time, betraying your own perception of reality to keep someone else comfortable deeply erodes your fundamental sanity.
It's the difference between accommodating a quirky house and surviving a dangerous environment.
Exactly.
Which means once we have that horrifying realization that we are living in a floodlight level of dysfunction, we have to finally draw the line.
We have to call the electrician, relationally speaking.
We have to set a boundary. But how do we actually do that without just being petty or controlling? That requires understanding the anatomy of a good boundary versus a bad boundary.
This distinction is where most people fail. They finally get the courage to set a boundary, but they set a bad one, it blows up, and they retreat back into people-pleasing.
So what is a bad boundary?
A bad boundary is almost always focused entirely on what the other person must do. The underlying motivation is controlling them, punishing them, or manipulating them into changing their behavior.
Like, if you don't stop texting your ex, I'm going to take your phone away. Or if you speak to me like that again, I'm going to embarrass you in front of your friends.
Exactly. Those aren't boundaries. Those are ultimatums and threats.
Okay, so what is a good boundary?
A good boundary, structurally, focuses strictly on what you will do. The motivation is self-control and self-preservation. It is about managing your own behavior, protecting your own environment, and stewarding your own safety.
So you are taking absolute responsibility for the only thing you actually control, yourself.
Exactly. And the golden rule of this entire framework: a boundary without a consequence is just a weak, pathetic suggestion.
A weak suggestion. Wow.
It is entirely meaningless. If you declare, "I will not tolerate being yelled at," but then you sit there and allow yourself to be yelled at for another 20 minutes,
Yeah.
you do not have a boundary.
You have a preference.
You have preference.
Oh, great.
And the research synthesizes the theology of consequences here in a way that completely shifts the paradigm. Think back again to the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
When Adam and Eve rebelled and were expelled, God didn't just ask them nicely to leave. He placed angels with flaming swords to physically guard the entrance so they could not return.
Which honestly has always sounded incredibly harsh to me. It
Yeah.
sounds like the ultimate petty, punitive punishment. You broke the rule, now face the flaming swords.
It absolutely appears punitive until you understand the underlying mechanism of why. The text illuminates that this wasn't an act of vengeance, it was an act of profound preservation.
Preservation.
Yes. If Adam and Eve had been allowed to stay and eat from the tree of life while trapped in a sinful, fallen, corrupted state, they would have been locked into a state of eternal decay.
Oh, wow.
They would have lived forever in their brokenness, unable to be redeemed. The consequence of expulsion, enforced by the angels, actually protected them from a far more horrific fate.
So consequences, when designed correctly within a healthy boundary, are meant to protect the integrity of the relationship and the individuals involved. They are not designed merely to inflict pain.
That reframes everything. The angels weren't there to punish, they were the consequence required to protect.
So when we allow a boundary to be violated without enforcing the consequence, we aren't being graceful or nice. We are actively validating the bad behavior.
We were looking the person in the eye and saying, "You can treat me with level 3 responsibility. I will keep giving you level 10 access, and I will personally absorb the emotional cost of your actions."
And that cost will bankrupt you.
It really will. When you drop a boundary just to de-escalate tension and keep the peace, you are engaging in a dangerous, temporary performance. You are buying a few hours of quiet at the cost of your long-term health.
This makes me think of the flooded basement house scenario from the research.
Let's play this out.
Imagine a young couple. They are desperate to buy their first home. They see photos online of this charming, picture-perfect starter home, incredible curb appeal, beautiful landscaping, fresh paint.
Looks great on the outside.
Right. They rush over to the open house, but it happens to be the middle of a torrential downpour. They walk through the beautiful upstairs, but when they go down the stairs into the basement, water is literally spraying through the cinder block walls.
It's not a puddle, it's a geyser.
The structural integrity is failing. Now, the realtor might try to distract them with the crown molding upstairs, but fresh paint and external charm cannot fix a crumbling, flooded foundation.
The charm is actively deceptive. The outside facade is designed to distract you from the fact that the foundation is actively dissolving.
But, okay, let's translate that to a person. What if the person acting toxically realizes they pushed you too far, and suddenly they become incredibly charming?
The honeymoon phase of the cycle.
Right. They buy you flowers, they cry, they promise they've seen the light, and they are going to change. Don't we owe them a dropped boundary? Shouldn't we give them the benefit of the doubt and let them back in?
The psychological research in the biblical text explicitly warn against this. Proverbs 31.30 states bluntly, "Charm is deceptive."
Charm is deceptive.
Changing an external behavior for a few days, buying flowers, suppressing a temper without doing the agonizing, sustained work of healing the internal root issue is purely a performance.
It's slapping a coat of waterproof paint on a basement wall that is bowing under the pressure of a flood.
Exactly. Dropping your boundaries too soon just because the person is acting charming or weeping is like drilling more holes into a foundation that is already failing. You are accelerating the collapse of the relationship.
Because true reconciliation requires observable evidence of changed thoughts, changed habits, and changed patterns.
Consistently demonstrated over a significant period of time.
Not just a good weekend. As long as it takes to rebuild the trust.
Yes.
Because if we don't hold that line, if we constantly drop our boundaries to appease someone else's dysfunction, the toll it takes isn't just a mild headache or a bad mood.
It's much worse.
The sources dive deep into the medical realities here, and it is honestly terrifying. A lack of boundaries will literally bankrupt your physical and emotional health.
This brings us to the harsh physiological realities of chronic boundary violations. We have a tendency to talk about our emotions as if they are abstract, ethereal concepts floating in the ether.
Like they're just thoughts.
Right. But your emotions are deeply tethered to your biology. They operate very much like a physiological bank account. And just like a bank account, your nervous system can become severely overdrawn.
The body keeps the score. If you are constantly swallowing your truth, walking on eggshells, and continuously bracing your body for the next inevitable boundary violation, your body is absorbing all of that kinetic energy.
It causes severe, quantifiable physical consequences. Your body is physically mounting a defense against emotional danger.
We have to look at the underlying science of the limbic system to understand why this happens.
Let's do it. The limbic system is the primitive feeling center of your brain. Its primary directive is survival.
Yeah.
If you are walking in the woods and you are suddenly chased by a saber-toothed tiger, your amygdala, the alarm bell of the limbic system, instantly overrides your logical prefrontal cortex.
It triggers a massive fight, flight, or freeze response.
Exactly. It dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream, your heart rate skyrockets, your breathing becomes shallow, and your digestive system shuts down so all your energy can go to your muscles. Your body is optimized to survive the next 10 minutes.
Which is an incredible, miraculous biological design if there actually is a tiger.
Precisely. It is designed for acute, short-term threats. But when you are trapped in a toxic relationship, where your emotional boundaries are constantly under siege, your brain perceives that toxic person as the tiger.
So you are living in a chronic, unending state of fight, flight, or freeze.
Your body is constantly flooded with cortisol. That anxiety you feel in your chest, that is an alarm bell. It is supposed to alert you to danger so you can take action and get to safety.
It is a biological signal. It is not meant to be a permanent state of residence.
No, it is not.
This changes the way we look at anxiety completely. The sources bring up Philippians 4.4-9 to discuss this, which I think is brilliant because that passage is so often weaponized.
It really is.
It says, do not be anxious about anything. I've heard people use that to spiritually shame someone having a panic attack. Like, oh, if you were just a better Christian or had more faith, you wouldn't need anti-anxiety meds.
Which is such a harmful misinterpretation.
But the analysis here argues that it's not shaming us at all. It's an instruction manual on how to process the limbic alarm bell.
It's basically saying, hear the alarm, acknowledge the threat, shift your cognitive focus, present your request to God, and deliberately return your nervous system to a state of peace.
It's saying don't just sit in the burning building listening to the fire alarm ring for 10 years. Get out of the building.
It is a profound call to action, not a condemnation of your neurobiology. And the physical toll of sitting in that burning building, of bathing your organs in stress hormones for years, is catastrophic.
Yeah, the author of our source material shares her own deeply personal, harrowing medical journey to illustrate this.
It's incredibly intense.
During the years she was enduring severe emotional trauma in her marriage, dealing with devastating broken boundaries and hidden addictions, her physical body began to systematically shut down.
She ended up in the ICU with a twisted colon, requiring major emergency surgery.
And her surgeons explicitly noted that her internal organs looked incredibly inflamed, as if she had been physically struck by a bus.
They drew a direct medical correlation between the physical trauma in her gut and the extreme chronic emotional stress she was suppressing.
She subsequently battled breast cancer and then suffered a complete, painful separation of her abdominal wall.
That is just... It's a terrifying testament to the fact that you absolutely cannot separate your emotional reality from your physical biology.
You can try to ignore the red flags in your relationship, but your body will eventually force you to pay attention to the boundaries your mind is too scared to set. It will stop you in your tracks.
It will.
But on a slightly lighter note, because we need a breath here, speaking of covering up toxic situations, I have to bring up the poop spray anecdote.
Oh my gosh, yes. It is the perfect comedic relief for a very heavy concept.
It's so funny. but it beautifully illustrates how good intentions can be tragically misapplied.
Okay, set the scene for this one.
Okay, so Lysa is gifted this lovely, expensive-looking bag of toiletries after speaking at an event. She's digging through it, and in the bottom of the bag, she finds this beautiful little glass bottle of spray.
Unlabeled, I assume.
She spritzes it on her wrist, thinks it smells absolutely divine like fresh lemon and lavender, and immediately integrates it into her routine as her daily body perfume.
Oh,
She wears it everywhere. She wears it to meetings, out to dinner, and she raves about it to all her friends for months.
for months.
Finally, a close friend is visiting, goes into Lysa's bathroom, sees the bottle sitting on the counter, and texts her in absolute sheer horror. Please tell me you aren't wearing this. Stop using this immediately. It's spray you use to cover up the smell in a toilet bowl before you go.
She had been enthusiastically wearing bathroom odor eliminator as a luxury perfume for months.
It's objectively hilarious, but the metaphorical lesson is razor sharp.
It is. Even a genuinely good thing, like the desire to be a peacemaker or a deep capacity for empathy and forgiveness, when used in the wrong application, like repeatedly enabling toxic, destructive behavior, becomes incredibly toxic to your own life.
You are taking a good intention and misapplying it to cover up the stench of profound dysfunction.
Yeah,
You end up covered in it.
you really do.
So, practically speaking, what does this all mean for the person listening right now? If they are sitting in their car listening to us and realizing their limbic system is firing on all cylinders because of a specific relationship, how do they actually initiate a boundary without spiraling into a full-blown panic attack?
The first non-negotiable step is to manage your own physiological arousal. You cannot set a healthy boundary while your amygdala is hijacked.
You have to wait for the prefrontal cortex, your logical, reasoning brain, to come back online.
Yes. If you are triggered, give yourself 20 minutes before reacting. Drink a glass of cold water to stimulate the vagus nerve. Breathe deeply. Ground yourself in reality.
Okay, and then?
Then, when your heart rate is down, approach the conversation with a specific cognitive framework.
It's curious, not furious. I love that framing, curious, not furious. It completely removes the hostility.
It removes the defensive posturing. And you must remember Jim Kress's golden rule of communication, which is vital here. Adults inform, children explain.
Adults inform, children explain. That is so clarifying.
When you are setting a boundary, you are an adult informing another adult of your limits and your parameters. You are not a child frantically trying to over-explain and justify your reality to an authority figure, begging them to validate your feelings.
You do not need their permission to protect yourself.
Exactly.
This is where the rubber meets the road. The research actually provides specific, actionable scripts for this.
Instead of getting sucked into a 2-hour circular emotional argument where they gaslight you, you deliver a clean statement.
You say something like, I love you and I value our relationship, but when you raise your voice and call me names, it affects me in ways I am no longer willing to accept. I am requesting that you stop. If you are unable to agree to this, I will need to leave the room and limit our interactions until we can speak respectfully.
Period. End of sentence. Notice there is no question mark at the end of that script.
You aren't asking, is that okay with you? Do you think that's fair?
You are firmly informing them of the new gravitational reality of the relationship.
And this is where you must brace yourself, because you must be prepared for the fact that they will almost certainly hate it.
Which transitions us perfectly into the mechanics of navigating the inevitable pushback. You can execute the boundary flawlessly. You can use total grace, a calm voice, the perfect script, and they still might absolutely explode in anger.
Oh, they will. If they have been benefiting from your lack of boundaries, they will pull out all the stops. Guilt trips, rage, silent treatment, smear campaigns.
Yes, and here is the cognitive reframe you need to survive it.
Mm.
Their severe pushback is often the highest compliment they can give you.
Okay, wait, a compliment. How is someone screaming at me in my kitchen or giving me the silent treatment for a week a compliment?
Because it is empirical proof that the boundary is working.
Oh, wow.
It means you are no longer blindly cooperating with their dysfunction. When you unilaterally change the steps to the dance you've been doing for years, and you stop buffering them from the consequences of their actions, they will feel the intense friction of reality.
They may never view your boundary as a positive thing because your boundary is shining a bright light on a behavior they desperately want to keep hidden in the dark.
Their anger is just the friction of losing control.
This dives deep into the psychology of emotional immaturity. The text quotes a clinical counselor with a phrase that stopped me in my tracks. What people don't work out, they act out.
It is a fundamental truth of human psychology. When someone lacks emotional restraint and reacts entirely disproportionately to a reasonable boundary, when they yell, manipulate, blame shift, or play the ultimate victim,
They are not operating as an adult in the present moment.
they are likely emotionally regressing to the exact age where an unhealed childhood trauma or core wound occurred. They are acting out of an old, unaddressed deficit.
To their unhealed inner child, your healthy, necessary boundary feels like a profound existential rejection.
But here is the hard truth. You cannot manage their unhealed trauma for them. You cannot be their therapist. You must maintain what the text calls emotional sobriety.
Emotional sobriety. I want to linger on this because it's powerful. The text links this concept to 1 Peter 5.8, which advises, be sober-minded, be watchful.
Usually when we hear the word sobriety, we strictly think of abstaining from alcohol or narcotics. But in this context, it's about not letting your own emotions get completely intoxicated by their manufactured drama.
The etymology of the Greek words used in that passage is incredibly revealing. The word for sober-minded is nepho, which literally means to actively curb the controlling influence of inordinate emotions and to remain grounded in reason.
It means not getting drunk on panic.
And the word for watchful is gregorio, which means to be acutely alert, awake, and not numbed out to reality.
You have to stay awake to the actual dynamics of the relationship rather than being lulled to sleep by your manipulation or your own denial.
And reality is subject to the unforgiving laws of equilibrium. The research points out that water always seeks its own level. If you place a glass of water on a flat table, the water will settle completely flat.
It defies physics for the water to be high on the left side and low on the right side.
In a human relationship, immense tension builds when two people are operating at vastly different levels of emotional maturity. That tension cannot hold forever.
Eventually, either one person will do the grueling work to rise to maturity, or the other person will be exhausted and sink down to the level of immaturity.
To visually illustrate this concept of passive decay, let's look at the mildew house analogy.
Imagine a house situated in the brutal, humid heat of a deep southern summer. The previous owners moved out, turned off the air conditioning, and inexplicably left all the windows wide open.
When you walk into that house a month later, it's not just uncomfortably warm. The unaddressed heat and the persistent moisture have caused black mildew to grow inside the drywall.
The floors are warped. Permanent structural damage has occurred simply through inaction.
Passivity is profoundly destructive.
If you leave your emotional windows wide open to toxic behavior and refuse to turn on the air conditioning of boundaries, the mildew of resentment and trauma will permanently damage your psychological foundation.
Or, think about it actively, like the high school table game. Have you ever seen kids play this?
Oh, yeah?
One person stands up high on a sturdy table, and another person sits down on the floor. They lock hands, and on the count of 3, they try to pull the other person to their respective level.
The physics of that game are undeniable and universally consistent. The person sitting on the floor will almost always effortlessly pull the standing person down.
Gravity inherently favors the descent.
It requires massive, sustained muscular exertion to pull dead weight upward, but it requires only a slight tug to pull someone down.
Which perfectly maps to toxic relationships. You cannot lift someone to emotional health if they fundamentally refuse to engage their own muscles and do the work.
If you are standing on the table of health and boundaries, and they are sitting on the floor of dysfunction and victimhood,
And you insist on keeping your fingers interlocked with theirs without setting a boundary, they will yank you down to the floor and you will crack your head open.
that is the harsh, unavoidable reality of enabling.
But I have to interject here. Because the loudest argument in my head right now is, but they aren't toxic all the time. What about those flashes of brilliance? What about those glimpses of incredible potential and kindness they show when they are having a good week?
That is the hook that keeps millions of people trapped in abusive or destructive cycles. We see the profound good in them, the person they could be, and we hold on to it like a life raft in a hurricane.
But the source material addresses this with a devastatingly clear perspective.
If you have to consistently trade the absolute best parts of who you are, your peace, your joy, your sanity, merely to manage and protect the absolute worst parts of who they are, you are hanging your entire hope on air.
Glimpses of potential are not a structural foundation for a healthy relationship.
A glimpse is exactly that, a fleeting anomaly. It is not a sustainable, lived reality. You cannot build a safe life on a 5% glimpse of health if the other 95% of their behavior is actively destroying your central nervous system.
Trading the best of who you are to protect the worst of who they are. That is a sobering
This
sentence.
is
So, if we know the math, if we know the physics of the table game, why do we still do it? Why do we fall for the 5% glimpses, instantly cave to their angry pushback, and drop our perfectly good boundaries?
The research suggests it almost always boils down to one core, deeply hidden fear. We are absolutely terrified of what they will think of us. We are paralyzed by their opinion.
This is the invisible mindset that undermines and destroys boundaries before they are even fully constructed. It is the deep-seated, often unconscious belief that other people's opinions serve as the ultimate judge of our identity.
When our identity is fragile, we seek validation through compliance. This is exactly why we often mistakenly pose a boundary as a question. I really need you to stop criticizing my parenting. Is that okay with you?
We are actively inviting them to debate the validity of our reality. We are begging them to validate our basic need for safety because we don't believe we have the authority to claim it ourselves.
And when they refuse to validate it and instead push back with anger, it hurts so deeply.
The expert breakdown of exactly why this pushback is so agonizing is incredibly validating. First, it's offensive. They assign malicious, false motives to us. They look at us and say, "You're just being selfish. You never really loved me. You're a hypocrite."
Second, it's deeply threatening. It directly triggers our primal fear of abandonment. The subconscious thought is, if I hold this boundary, they will leave me and I will be alone.
And third, it's profoundly disillusioning. It makes us question our own grasp on reality. We spin into self-doubt. Am I crazy? Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I really am the problem.
But we have to anchor ourselves to this truth. Healthy, emotionally regulated people do not have a visceral issue with other people's healthy boundaries.
Think about it. If you tell a healthy, secure friend, "Hey, I love you, but I can't talk about politics right now. My anxiety is too high," that healthy friend will immediately say, "I totally understand. Let's talk about that new movie instead."
They adjust. If someone viciously attacks you simply for setting a self-protective limit, their aggressive attack is the absolute undeniable proof that the boundary was desperately, urgently needed.
I love the analogy used here to explain our fear of their reaction. It goes all the way back to the elementary school behavior boards. Do you remember those?
Oh, wow. Yes.
The giant bulletin board at the front of the classroom with every kid's name written on a little pocket. And inside the pocket, you had a green card, a yellow card, and a red card.
A very common, highly effective, and deeply stressful system of public behavior management.
Stressful is an understatement. I lived in sheer daily terror of having my name moved from the green card to the yellow card. If you talked out of turn, the teacher would make you walk up to the board in front of all your silent, staring peers and physically flip your card from green to yellow.
It felt like a permanent, searing mark on your soul. You were suddenly a bad kid.
And the author astutely points out that we carry this exact same psychological terror into our adult relationships. We are terrified that setting a boundary will cause someone to walk up to the mental bulletin board and give us a red card.
We are paralyzed by the fear that they will label us a bad Christian, a selfish friend, a rebellious wife, or a terrible daughter. We are 30, 40, 50 years old, and we are still just desperately trying to keep our green card on the board.
We have to mature beyond the behavior board. We must learn the vital difference between checking ourselves and questioning our core identity.
Checking yourself is a sign of emotional maturity, it sounds like. Did I communicate that boundary kindly? Was I clear? Was my tone appropriate? You are evaluating your execution.
But questioning your identity is toxic and destabilizing, it sounds like. Am I a fundamentally horrible person because I said no to my mother? Am I unlovable because I won't give him money?
If your intrinsic identity and worth are inextricably tied to their fluctuating opinion of you, you will never, ever be able to maintain a boundary. You will always fold to secure the green card.
So, if we have to meticulously strip away their opinion of us, how do we actually remember who we are beneath all the layers of chronic people-pleasing?
When you've spent decades managing other people's emotions, how do you find the person who isn't defined by the red cards and green cards?
The author provides a deeply moving, highly effective cognitive exercise to combat this identity amnesia. It's called the baby photo exercise.
She instructs the reader to find a physical photograph of themselves as an infant, a toddler, or a very young child. Hold that picture in your hands and really look at it.
That little face is you before life happened. That is you before trauma, before the relentless demands of others, before heartbreak, betrayals, and systemic dysfunction wrote their painful narratives onto your perception of yourself.
You look at that innocent, open little face, and you are forced to realize God made that child completely whole. That child inherently possesses dignity. That child is worthy of fierce protection.
You would never look at a picture of that innocent baby and say, hey, your sole purpose in life is to endlessly sacrifice your physical and emotional well-being so that toxic, destructive adults don't have to feel uncomfortable.
Exactly. You realize with sudden clarity that you were designed with inherent, unshakable value that is not remotely contingent on your ability to endlessly accommodate abuse or dysfunction.
Remembering that original God-given wholeness gives you the profound strength to look a toxic dynamic in the eye and say, I am worthy of safety. I do not need to endlessly sacrifice myself on the altar of your dysfunction just to earn my right to exist.
You finally reclaim your identity from the tyranny of their opinions.
This has been an incredibly heavy but deeply liberating journey today. Let's recap what we've unpacked.
We started by realizing that we aren't crazy, that love absolutely requires trust, and trust cannot breathe without a safe environment.
We learned the mathematical equation of relationships, balancing the level of access we give someone with the exact level of responsibility they demonstrate.
We also identified the profound danger of normalizing dysfunction, training everyone to leave the floodlights on just to avoid calling the electrician.
And we examined the devastating physical toll that emotional bankruptcy takes on our central nervous system.
We dropped the poop spray of people-pleasing.
We finally learned that a boundary without an enforced consequence is just a wishful suggestion, and we explored how to claim our emotional sobriety when the inevitable angry pushback comes.
And ultimately, we learned that setting boundaries isn't a sign of relational failure or a lack of love. It is the ultimate sign of fighting for the truest, healthiest, most sustainable version of love.
If you are listening to this and feeling overwhelmed, know this. Setting a boundary might feel like you are slamming the front door on someone you deeply care about. But remember the reality.
You aren't bricking up the door. You are just finally installing a lock.
You are looking at them and saying, you can still come in, but you have to wipe your muddy feet, and you are no longer allowed to smash the furniture. I love you, but I'm fighting for my peace.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to ponder as you navigate the rest of your week. Think about the one boundary you have been most terrified to set. The conversation you keep endlessly avoiding because you dread their reaction.
What if the temporary, intense discomfort of their disappointment is the exact necessary price required to permanently buy back your own peace?
If you don't draw the line today, what toxic mildew are you passively allowing to grow in the foundation of your life for tomorrow?
That is the question we all have to answer. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly important deep dive. We hope the insights we discussed today give you the courage to check your locks, set your passwords, and fiercely protect your peace. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we will catch you next time.